Welcome back to the Macro Golf YouTube channel. We're back with Damon. Damon, welcome back to the channel. You guys have seen these videos we've done before. I'll tag those up above here so you can click on those. Today we're talking about something that potentially could ruin your golf game this winter. As we move off the golf course, we're going to start moving into drive ranges. We're going to start moving to places like this, the beautiful simulator room. But we've got potential with these places to ruin your game. So today we're going to talk about what potential issues you might run into by starting to practice somewhere like this. And don't worry, we're also going to tell you exactly how to practice in a place like this so you can still make progress this winter. Guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we're back with Damon and we're going to be talking about practice and how you can efficiently practice in some kind of winter environment. Something like a simulator like this, maybe your club has got a simulator room, maybe you've got one at home, or driving range or whatever it is. And we're going to talk about some issues that you might come across when practicing somewhere like here. And also we're going to give some tips on how to make your practice more efficient. So Damon, first of all, thanks for coming back on the channel.
Thank you for having me.
Really appreciate having you back here. Let's talk about this because it's something we just spoke about off camera and we think it's something that potentially people are going to run into as a potential issue.
100%.
It's an advantage having a space like this to come and practice in. But maybe if we just spoke a bit about the issues that people might face coming here, what are some of the problems, and then we're going to give some guys some tips. So where do we start?
The biggest issue I see straight away is we're in a closed environment right now where we're always standing on a square mat, hitting into a square screen. That's not like anything we experience on the golf course, right?
No.
So it's making sure that we don't just get into default, this is my setup, this is where I'm aiming.
Yeah.
Because as soon as we get on the golf course in that open environment, it's completely different.
Yep.
And the biggest issues I come across every spring is guys have been hitting the range, pounding it hard, really looking for those improvements. And ultimately, they then are unable to take those foundations, that setup, those principles to the golf course. Yeah. Because they've been pounding balls from those really good setups, but they then don't actually have the procedures or the pre-shot routines to help them get correctly set up out in that golf course.
For sure. I've seen this in my own game as well. You know, practice on a driving range, it's very easy to have a square line.
Absolutely.
And in fact, I find it really off-putting if I ever have to try and aim away from that line. Same with a tee box.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, a tee box is slightly wonky on the line that I want to hit it on. I find it's really confusing. So I think that we can get very, very comfortable seeing square lines. And there's obviously some stuff that we can do to get better at that. But maybe you want to just kind of show us the typical setup that you see people work through. I think this would be quite familiar for a lot of people at home. Let's see what that would look like, because obviously we've got a nice square simulator here.
Absolutely.
So what would be the typical thing you'd see people walk in and do? So you've got a nice alignment stick down here. You've got a square mat to work across.
Straight away,
these people do it.
Mate, I love that. So straight away, we just come in feet first, feet square to the nice green line in front, or if you're going to get in there relative to the screen, and then we go club face relative to feet. And then we won't even engage with target. We'll think about, right, what I've got to try and do, 10 or 12 different swing thoughts, right? Yeah. And then we'll execute the shot. And then we'll see the outcome and we'll go, oh, well, I've done this wrong, this wrong, and this wrong in my swing.
And it's hard because there's nothing really to see here, right? Like, I mean, what are you going to look at? You're not going to start picking a tree out in the distance here. You're not going to start saying, you know, I'm going to hit it off that tree. There's no wind. There's no like...
Absolutely.
To visualize.
Extremely closed.
Exactly. So how do we get around that problem? Because I think, oh, first of all, what problems could that cause? Then we get onto the golf course. We'll cover that first maybe. Yep. And then we'll talk about how we're actually going to get around this. So if someone did come and spend their winter practicing this, we obviously might see some improvements in ball striking, maybe
100%.
Make some improvements in positions. But what potential issues could they walk back into when they start to deliver out for the golf course?
Perfect. So there was no process there for me being able to get set up correctly.
Yeah.
Or certainly not getting set up correctly and then being able to transfer that to the golf course.
Yeah.
So with every practice session, a certain part of that really wants to be focused on that routine. The pre-shot routine to be able to take what we're working on here out into that golf course. Yeah. And part of that routine needs to be alignment. Yeah. So like we did there, I just really brushed over the fact for, oh, body alignment square to the mat, then club face relative to body. When actually, as soon as we try and take that out into the golf course and we're looking at a target that isn't 10 feet in front, it's actually 100, 200 yards away. It's very difficult to get the body lined up correctly.
Yeah.
And that then negatively influences club face and ultimately then the way we swing. So if we don't get the body set up correctly with the correct alignment for you, the individual, and the way you're trying to swing it, it will negatively influence our swing. So all the time we'll see people get set up poorly on the golf course, swing it poorly as a result, and we'll blame the swing when actually it's the setup that's at fault.
Yeah, that's kind of a question I had actually. So you've obviously got all these numbers down here. You've got
Yep.
all of this information, and people could be working with these numbers and think, my path is this. They understand exactly what's going on. They've started to dial this in. They're starting to get some consistency. But I suppose what you're saying is, as soon as that comes in, and we try to then take alignment out to the golf course, and that gets off, suddenly we see all these numbers change, right? Because the body's going to start to try and pull things back
Absolutely,
and push things back online. Above feet, below feet, things are going to change, and suddenly this lovely environment that we've created these perfect numbers in goes out the window.
correct. Absolutely, mate. So getting the process right and understanding what's the most important thing. Now, ultimately, we want the ball to start on line, right?
Yep.
So the most important thing is club face. So our alignment process needs to start with club face and then build everything else around from there. Because if we don't, what typically tends to happen, and we see it time and time and time again out on the golf course, is you've got, even if you go directly behind the ball right now, and we'll pick the intermediate spot. So what I mean by that, guys, is very simply, we've got our target. We're at St Andrews here, 18th hole. So we're going to go straight down the middle of the fairway. Okay. Now, if you just try and get lined up to that target straight down the middle of the fairway or at the end of the hole, because there's really very little reference points there until you get past the hole, it's very difficult to get lined up to it. So if we come back behind and we pick an intermediate spot, which is roughly 2-3 feet in front of our golf ball, straight away there, it's much easier to get aligned to it. But again, if we try and go feet first, what we're going to do with subconsciously without even realizing is we're typically going to get a stance that's aligned too far out to the right. And then that's going to negatively influence club face. And from there, if we do the correct swing you've been working on for months, you're going to miss it massively outright. Yeah. So what we then subconsciously do is typically we'll have to work over, bring back that chop that everyone's probably been working so hard to get rid of. So, and that's influenced entirely through the setup process. Yeah. So again, going back to club face is king. Well, let's get club face set up first. And so that the feet don't influence that in any way, because again, slightly off, you can try and work on club face and try and get club face set up. But if you set up with your feet like this, trying to work on your club face, that is going to influence your face whether you realize it or not. So rather than coming in with your traditional setup, left foot, right foot working in line, come in staggered. So come get your intermediate spot, get your grip, and then from there, stagger it. So right foot in front of left, club face first. Now all of a sudden you're really zoned in on getting club face relative to your intermediate spot. Then get your feet lined up relative to club face. All of a sudden now, face is influencing feet correctly rather than feet influencing club face negatively. That makes sense?
Totally makes sense. So let's see that routine in
Real
its
time.
entirety. We've got a lot of cameras behind, so we can see exactly what your
Yeah, so
we've got a little POV set up here, so we can see exactly what's going on.
brilliant stuff. So again, obviously we're using the studio right now, but at the end of the day, we're going to pick a spot. And then for me, I'm going to work it down the shaft. I'm going to pick a spot just in front. I've actually got a little bit of an old thread that's 3 feet in front. So that's now my intermediate aim point. From there, I'm going to come back, take my grip, and then I'm going to come on in, stagger my feet. So right foot in front of the left, club face down. I'm going to line my face up relative to my aim point, and then my feet to the perpendicular line that my club face has just created. So now I'm set up where I want to be, and it's not going to negatively influence the way I'm going to have to move the club in order to get the face back onto the ball.
Love it. So are there any things that we can do in a simulator room like this to start practicing that and working on that? Because obviously we've got the TrackMan, obviously, but some people are going to have different setups. Would you recommend just kind of picking that same spot every single time? Would you recommend then trying to work off of that spot? How would you then kind of use this to practice that? Because I think this is, obviously we're still going to practice all this other stuff, right? We're not saying we're
absolutely.
not going to stop practicing. All these other things are going to improve the metrics. But how in an environment like this or at the driving range can we start to practice and train ourselves through that movement? Is there anything we can do to
hugely
our practice?
So if we just forget about the TrackMan numbers for a little while and grab an alignment stick and just literally pop it on the screen as kind of your straight line reference, yeah? Now from there, what we can do is now I've got a spot here where I actually want this ball to start right of that cane. So that's my start line goal, okay? So I'll come back, I'll draw my line straight down and pick my intermediate spot that's just in front. From there, we'll go through the rest of the process. So it's club face, staggered feet, body relative to club face. I'm going to check my intermediate spot. I'm going to check where that then goes back through there to my target and back. And then I'm going to execute the shot. So forgetting about the TrackMan data there, straight away I've got feedback. I hit my target line, which was right. Okay. So now can we do that going the opposite way? So again, Kane's in the same. So what's great about this is
you could be done on the driving range as well, right?
Driving range, not even every golf course now should have at least a net, right? So you can work on solid contact and start line anywhere. So again, now same process. If I want this ball now to start left, I'm not worried if it draws away. I'm purely working on start line. And what's great here in this indoor facility, it's testing me here because it's making me work against the straight lines. Okay. Now, as we're talking, I felt like I didn't go in sidestep yet. So it influenced me. So I noticed that I did what all good golfers do. I wasn't comfortable. I stepped off. One of the hardest things in golf to do, by the way. So again, you can see there it hit left side. So ultimately, that was my goal.
And what I loved about that is that actually it took a bit of focus for you to do that, right? So,
you
saw that the first one we didn't really have a lot of focus. There wasn't a lot of focus going in. You would just walk up and hit a shot, and that's typically what we'd see at drum range, indoor simulator. No real focus on exactly where we're trying to line up and we're going to set up. But you actually required a little bit of extra focus there to do that. You had to dial in a little bit, right? You had to think about that, which I think was pretty cool. Nice. So let's recap that for the guys then. So we're saying that square areas, yes, okay, if we're going to start working on some things in the swing, it's not too much of an issue for us to produce in practice. We just need to consider that we will get comfortable in right angles, and that will be a very neutral environment for us. And we need to spend some time working ourselves out of these right angles, and we can do that in the same way by working through a process of, practicing what we should be practicing on the golf course, which is alignment and aim and doing stuff. And just because we're indoors doesn't mean we can't do that, right?
Absolutely, mate, 100%. And people might say, oh, the bays aren't big enough. Okay, granted, for great angles, but we only need to be turning 5 or 6 degrees to then really start to see it. Because ultimately on the golf course, that's pretty much what we're going to need, especially on those tee boxes. The amount of times I'd be out on an on-course playing lesson, and I would know that this particular tee box points us down the rough, down the right, for example. And we'll have a conscious conversation with the client as we're walking up. So remember, if you just go to default, you're going to set up to the square line of the tee box and it's going to point you down the right, and we're going to miss it right unless you alter your swing. Where do they miss it? Down the right. So even though we've had that conversation, if you don't go through that process consciously, you just default. And we always everyone says we want to be more consistent, but we don't actually do those basic fundamentals consistently. So it's the fantastic starting point. So like you said before, working down the straight line in a studio, on a driving range, in a net is brilliant when you're working on your technical stuff. But within that session, you should still have a part of that where you're working through your process, your routine, your pre-shot routine, working performance-based.
Love it.
So you're splitting up that practice and you're making that practice so much more tangible.
Love it. Damon, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Guys, I'm going to put all of Damon's details here on the screen, so drop him a message. I know he's always keen to have conversations with anyone that reaches out. So if you're struggling with this, if you've got a simulator that you have access to, maybe you've got one at home and maybe you're not sure how to practice, then drop Damon a message.
Please do.
And he'll be happy to help you out on getting the most out of your practice for this winter as well. Thanks, Damon. Cheers, man.